Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Burt Lancaster, a former circus performer who rose to fame as a Hollywood leading man with some 70 movies to his credit, including From Here to Eternity and Atlantic City, in a career that spanned more than 4 decades. How Burt Lancaster's fate was sealed by Circus. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. The volatile life and times of Burt Lancaster. Lancaster's legacy is fractious and mercurial, but never dull. Burt Lancaster was one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the 1950s when he blossomed into a square-jawed but sensitive He-Man. Lancaster was born on November 2nd, 1913 in New York City and raised in East Harlem. After a stint at New York University, which he attended on an athletic scholarship, he quit to join the circus, where he worked as an acrobat. An injury forced Lancaster to give up the circus in 1939, and he worked a series of jobs until he was drafted into the army in 1942. Eventually he was reduced to taking his increasingly threadbare circus act to burlesques, performing between striptease acts and posing nude for male meat magazines. The war saved Lancaster from further career indignities. He vowed, once the war was over, never to be humiliated again, and he swore to turn Hollywood into his personal playground. Lancaster soon broke into the movies, and he soon became one of the world's most recognizable stars. It was Lancaster's early life in the slums of 1920s New York City that undoubtedly helped shape his intense appetites. His mother, Lizzie, was a domineering matriarch who thrashed her sons into shape. So insistent was Lizzie Lancaster that her sons rise above poverty and crime that Lancaster was beaten once by his mother for failing to return 5 cents in incorrect change to a grocery store. Certainly his mother's driving ambition for her son, combined with a physique which was already turning heads, had already pushed Lancaster to the brink of an acting career. Those who worked with Lancaster noticed the new power and wealth were accompanied by an intense anger and an overpowering need to control those around him. He would become depressed or elated for no particular reason. This mercurial tendency may have been the legacy of his domineering mother, his flight out of poverty, and the years of humiliation in the circus. Three years later, while on leave from the army, Lancaster's acting career was launched after he went to visit the woman who would become his second wife at the theatrical office where she was employed, and was asked by a producer's assistant to audition for a Broadway play. He caught the eye of agent Harold Hecht, who got Lancaster his first movie role in 1946's The Killers. Lancaster and Hecht later formed a highly successful production company together. He got the part as an army sergeant and soon got noticed by Hollywood. In 1946, Lancaster made his silver screen debut opposite Ava Gardner in The Killers, based on an Ernest Hemingway short story. Lancaster stars as the Swede, a former boxer who's tangled up with the mob and waiting to be murdered by hitmen. The actor was incredibly guarded when it came to his personal life, as he was also a complete perfectionist when it came to his professional life. Lancaster quickly gained control over his career and thus avoided Hollywood typecasting. In 1948, he co-founded Hecht Hill Lancaster, one of the first star-owned production companies. Along with antitrust legislation that forced studios to divest themselves of their theatre holdings, such ventures were instrumental in the downfall of the studio system. Although the films that Lancaster made for Hecht Hill Lancaster were not the company's most successful, the enterprise was important in establishing Lancaster's reputation as a versatile actor. He went on to star in the 1951 biopic Jim Thorpe, All-American, about the Native American Olympian, and 1952's The Crimson Pirate, in which he put his acrobatic skills to use as the swashbuckling title character. In 1953 he co-starred with Deborah Kerr and Frank Sinatra in From Here to Eternity, a World War II film set in Hawaii just before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The film, which contained the now iconic scene in which Lancaster and Kerr are locked in a beachside embrace as waves roll over them, earned Lancaster his first Best Actor Oscar nomination. Lancaster's greatest talent in films like From Here to Eternity, whose erotic love scenes in the surf with Deborah Kerr scandalised Hollywood censors in 1953, was to capture the essence of manly heterosexuality. Yet even in the 1950s, when his career was at its peak, Lancaster's second wife Norma and his many mistresses talked darkly of his passion for all kinds of sexual activity and partners, male or female. Documents released by the FBI and his family reveal that Lancaster, troubled by bouts of insecurity and depression. Among Lancaster's other movie credits during the 1950s were Apache, in which he plays a Native American warrior, Sweet Smell of Success, in which he plays a ruthless gossip columnist, and Gunfight at the OK Corral, in which he portrays Wyatt Earp to Kirk Douglas's Doc Holliday. During the 1960s and 1970s, Lancaster appeared in movies such as 1960's Elmer Gantry, which earned him a Best Actor Oscar for his performance as a conman turned preacher. 1961's Judgment at Nuremberg about the World War II war crime trials, 1962's Birdman of Alcatraz, which was based on the true story of a convicted murderer who becomes a bird expert while behind bars, and garnered Lancaster another Best Actor Oscar nomination. Italian director Luchino Visconti's 1963 historical drama The Leopard, in which Lancaster plays an aging aristocrat, 1968's The Swimmer, based on a John Cheever story, the 1970 disaster movie Airport, and 1979's Zulu Dawn, with Peter O'Toole and Bob Hoskins. In 1980, Lancaster co-starred in director Louis Malle's Atlantic City, and his performance as an aging gangster earned him his fourth Best Actor Academy Award nomination. He was also featured in Local Hero, in which he plays an eccentric oil company owner, and 1989's Field of Dreams, starring Kevin Costner. Among his producing credits were 1955's Marty, which won Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay and Best Actor, Ernest Borgnine. In addition to his amazing body of acting work, 75 theatrical releases, and a generous handful of TV movies and miniseries, Lancaster was politically active. He was a speaker at the 1963 March on Washington led by Martin Luther King Jr. He spoke out against the Vietnam War and McCarthyism. He campaigned for Democratic candidates and he supported homosexual rights. Toward the end of his life, while he was recovering from quadruple bypass surgery, he attended congressional hearings to protest the colorization of classic movies. Lancaster never stopped looking for love on both sides of the gender fence. The cause was probably narcissism. Lancaster's body was something he preened and protected all his life. Tragically for Lancaster, his final years gave him plenty of time to reflect on the frailty of his godly flesh. Just after his 1989 marriage to his third wife, Susan Martin, he suffered a stroke and spent his last 4 years confined to a wheelchair, struggling to communicate. He was cremated and his ashes are buried in Los Angeles' Westwood Memorial Park, with a simple plaque that belies his huge stature. Burt Lancaster, 1913, to 1994. His life appeared to have been a search for something he could never find in places where it had never been. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about Burt Lancaster's life and legacy? He's the actor who really struggled a lot to get to the top.